I'd like to have a word with you.
With me? You want to speak with me?
Yes, I do. Now get in the car.
It's not time yet.
I know. We can talk about that later. This is something different.
What is this about?
I was in Papa John's when I saw your husband.
Yes?
With another woman. I would presume that this woman is the beautiful Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
I knew her. A long time ago.
I know.
Do you? Then you must know all about it. Tell me, Nora, is this Mrs. Lynn to make an appointment at the bank?
How dare you ask me that, Mr. Krogstad? But since you asked, the answer to the question is yes. Mrs. Lynn has a job at the bank, but it was I who vouched for her.
I was right then about what I thought.
Sometimes you can influence people, I hope. Although I am a woman, it does not mean that. When someone is as high position as my husband, they must be careful not to offend anyone who
has influence.
Exactly.
Nora, you'll use my influence on my behalf so I can keep my job at the bank.
Who's going to replace you, Mr. Krogstad?
Oh, don't be so stupid. The woman Torvald was with. I must warn you, Mrs. Torvald, that you must use your influence on my behalf to prevent anything happening to me.
But I have no such control.
Don't you? Tell me, didn't you just say...
I know what I said, but what makes you think a woman can influence a man?
Listen to me, you stubborn Shifosa.
No, Mr. Krogstad.
I'm willing to fight for my job if I have to.
Money's not a problem. You have to believe me. I can't help you.
If you don't have the power to help me, then I'll just have to get rid of you.
No. You can tell my husband about the money I owe you.
Well, let's suppose if I did.
Then you will only bring trouble among yourself. Torvald will see what a horrible man you are, and you will lose your job.
Listen to me, Mrs. Torvald. Either you have the memory of my 6-year-old daughter, or you know absolutely nothing about money. Do you remember when your husband was ill?
Yes.
You came to me to borrow $5,000.
Who else could I have gone to?
And I promised you I would get you the money.
And you did.
You seemed so anxious that you didn't seem to have considered the conditions of our bargain.
What are you talking about?
Below your signature, there are a few lines constituting your father security for the money.
Which he did sign.
I had left the date blank, assuming that your father would have signed it. Do you remember?
Yes.
Then I gave you the bond to send to your father? Which you did, because you brought me the bond with your father's signature.
But haven't I been paying you off?
Correct. However, there's a problem with your father's signature on the IOU. What is the date when your father signed the IOU?
October 2nd.
I didn't quite catch that.
October 2nd.
But your father died on September 30th. Can you explain this?
I can explain this. I wrote my father's name.
Why? Doesn't it occur to you that you were committing fraud on me?
I don't know. There was just too much happening at the time.
I guess you didn't realize how guilty you were.
So you're telling me you wouldn't do anything to save your wife's life?
The law doesn't care about motives.
Well, then the law must be changed.
Maybe. But you must understand what I'm feeling right now. And remember this, Nora. If I don't get my job back, I'm going to expose you.
What do you want?
Just a little bit of information.
Be quick. What is it?
You know I got my dismissal.
I fought for you, Mr. Krogstad, but it was no use.
Does your husband even care for you? After he knows what I could do to you, and yet he dares.
How could I tell him?
Well, as a matter of fact, I didn't think much of it. It wasn't like my friend Torvald who showed so much courage.
Don't talk about my husband like that, Mr. Krogstad. What is it that you want?
I only want to see how you're doing, Nora. I've been thinking about you. You know, a person like me has feelings for someone.
Then show it. Think of my children.
Did you and your husband think of mine? But enough of that. I only wanted to tell you that you didn't need to take this matter too seriously.
I knew you wouldn't.
The whole thing could be settled quite quietly. Nobody needs to know. It could remain among us three.
My husband must never know.
Can you pay me?
No, not at once.
Can you get me the money in the next few days?
No.
If you had it wouldn't mean nothing to me, and I wouldn't give back your IOU.
So tell me what you want to do with it.
I only want to keep it, to have it in my possession. So if you have any desperate scheme in your head,
What if I have?
or if you think of something worse,
How do you know that?
put all of that out of your head.
How did you know I had that in mind?
Most of us think of that at first. I thought of it too, but I didn't have the courage.
Neither do I.
Besides, it would be very foolish. I have a letter in my pocket that explains everything.
Did you tell him everything?
Spare you as much as possible.
You must never read this letter. I'll get you the money somehow.
Pardon me, Shitposa, but I believe I told you.
I'm not talking about the money I owe you. Tell me how much you want from my husband. I will get it for you.
I demand nothing from your husband.
What do you demand then?
I'll tell you what I want. I want to regain my status in the world. I want to rise, and your husband will help me to do this. For the last 18 months, my record has been spotless. I've been bitter, need all the time, but I was ready to fight my way up, step by step. Now I've been put down again, and I will not be satisfied with merely being reinstated as a matter of grace. I want to rise, I will tell you. I must get into the bank in a higher position than before. Your husband shall create a place with purpose for me.
He will never do that.
Oh, but he will. I know him. He won't dare to show fight. And when he and I are together, you shall know. Before a year is not, I shall be in the manager's right hand. It won't be Torvald, but Krogstad.
That shall never be.
Perhaps you will.
But now I have the courage for it.
Oh, you don't frighten me. A little Shitposa like you doesn't scare me.
You shall see. You shall see.
Under the ice, perhaps. Down into the cold, Blackwater. And next spring to come up again, ugly, perilous, unrecognizable.
You can't terrify me.
You can't terrify me either. I have your husband in my pocket.
So what happens then?
Don't forget, your reputation is in my hands. Do nothing foolish. As soon as Torvald has received my letter, I shall expect to hear from him. And remember that it is your husband who has forced himself to back into this. Goodbye, Nora.